Hi, it's Will Goodall here from Tune the Channel with the legend that is John Duncan from the Greater Manchester Combined Authorities, here to talk about his amazing work regarding digital inclusion across the Greater Manchester area. Mr. Duncan, I don't want to make you embarrassed because I know what you like, but one of the nicest people I've ever worked with. So it's really great you make the time.
Thank you.
I don't know if you're ever unhappy, but you don't seem it. Our paths obviously passed across in a previous life a couple of times when we were working at Virgin.
That's right.
I said to you before the start, I've actually done a little bit of research, and you correctly said where you clicked on my LinkedIn, and there's an element of that, a strong element. So what I wanted to do straight away is what we try and cover here is your kind of journey, because yours is quite an interesting one. Private sector, public sector, private sector, public sector.
Yep.
And then there's an increasing amount of technology within that career journey, culminating to your position now with the Greater Manchester Combined Authorities, where you're a new role looking at kind of the whole infrastructure and adding value, if you like.
Yep.
So it's been quite an interesting journey, because normally, and you've probably got colleagues on both sides of the fence, you're either public sector till you die, or you're private sector and that's it.
Yeah.
Whereas you've done the dance between the two, which is, I think a lot of people watching this and listening will be quite interested on that journey. Sure. But obviously, kicking off first, you ran the bar at your student union for 6 years.
I did.
With 20 people. I've not read it, but of all the people running a student union bar, I did not think it would be you. So how did that come about? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, if I go back to the beginning, I suppose, and thanks for having me, Will, is I finished university and...
what did you study?
My degree was archaeology. So completely random. And I sort of say, if I look at my full journey, I've sort of gone from digging up, places to get ancient artifacts to digging up for digital. So it's I've gone that full from archaeology to digital. There's a full journey. So when I was at university and I went to Belfast, it was an amazing place to go. I obviously, like a lot of students do, got a side job and I worked in bars. And then I came home back to Yorkshire, and I got the bug of working in bars. Worked in a bar in Wakefield, which on Westgate, so Shaky Wakey on the Westgate run. Worked there, and then I got my own place not too long after that in Dewsbury. That went on for a bit of time, and then I got the opportunity to go to Leeds Metropolitan Student Union, so it's Leeds Beckett's university as it is now, and running the student union, and it was just great fun. I think I was a young lad in the 20s, living the dream really, and I enjoyed it. I had some really great memories, and I've actually got friends from life from that period of time.
How much was a pint then?
Oh, you were talking less than £2. I mean, like the most expensive was a Guinness, and that might have been £2, 20 or something. This was in the days of like, Hooch had just come out, and we sort of, that scene, and it was great, and a really enjoyable place to work with. And I worked in the city centre, and I'd work out in Headingley and in Kirkstall, where I was predominantly based. How
did you find the hours? Because I was similar to you, yeah. And one of the themes we've had on these podcasts is, for example, my boss did, I think, business management, which is a bit of a, like he says on it, there's 20,000 of me. Yeah. We had the owner of a Manchester business. He did drama and music, and then ended up in technology and all that stuff. Yeah. I did politics for my sins. You've done archaeology. Yeah. There's a theme here as I'm going through the technology and the guests. We do one thing, but then life kind of evolves, and you're almost on that journey, if you like, as you go.
Definitely a journey. I think if I look at it, you say, what were you going to do when you grow up? What that career? And I didn't know then, and I still probably don't necessarily know now, because things evolve and things change as you go through your career journey. I was lucky to say with the student union, it was one of those ones you could lock up and leave, so you didn't have to sleep above it. I had run a pub where I lived above it, and it was 24/7. It was really, really hard work. This wasn't as intense. But then I finished that role. I met my wife to be, and I was looking for a bit more.
Was she working for you? Was she a customer?
She was. She actually going a bit of a tangent here, but we were introduced via my sister, because she was my sister's boss at the Halifax Bank. So we met on a blind date.
Good tactical move there from your sister, because if it goes well, it'll help her work you later.
Absolutely, and it works out really well because we're still married now, and it's just so she came in and to my life, and that was like the hours that you were doing and the lifestyle. Probably I was like, I hit 30 and I thought, I could see my future, so I moved from there into retail, and I went to Asda for 3 years, and I did everything from shelf stacking to becoming a department manager. So I did that, and I didn't really like it, and that's then got me my first move into the public sector, which is when I moved to Leeds City Council, and I started out as the assistant manager of the Tourist Information Centre. And that brings some of my sort of passions about.
So kind of going from, if you like, the hospitality sector to retail.
Yeah.
Both hours, for example, are not brilliant, because I imagine married.
Yeah, I had a daughter come along in that period of time as well. Yeah.
And then they're different environments, if you like. So visit Leeds, part of the council, assistant manager, was it?
I was assistant manager, and then I became the manager of the Tourist Information Centre, yeah. How
did you find that coming from, I imagine, quite a regimented situation in terms of retail into a different environment? Was it more relaxed? How did you adapt to that move from private to public?
It was much more relaxed. It was really, I was brought in because of my retail expertise, and at the time the visitor centre was trying to develop its retail offer, but it was quite small. Although it was really busy, it was in Leeds train station, so a lot of people would have walked through it, and it just had that sort of freedom to do what I felt was the right thing to do to enhance it and bring money into it, into the visitor centre, to deliver the services that we were providing and try and make ourselves self-sufficient. And I had a very, very supportive manager. And then when she moved on, I took over her role, and a very much supportive team around me. And I always found Leeds City Council to be a very forward-thinking and proactive council and public sector service, not overly regulated, or people might have that opinion of it being quite restrictive, but not at all. And that's what I really liked. And through that period, then I sort of went on to do different roles within the council. And I suppose that sort of brings me to where I had my first dabble into digital, and that was 10 years ago, which is crazy.
It's frightening, isn't it? Sometimes you in the sector, you blink and whole new area. And I'm right, and this isn't from my research, this is just you were dealing with a lot of carriers and things like that. Was it the BDUK sort of?
It was the BDUK Super Connected Cities programme. So it was the first of its type sort of voucher scheme. We get a lot about voucher schemes at the moment now, but it was like the first one. And it was basically to support small businesses get connectivity to what was then the superfast broadband offers. And my role was to be the business development manager for that, to sort of really promote it across. It started out in Leeds and Bradford, but it grew because we were really successful. And like you say, we were engaging with the market. So all the telco providers, some really big names, but also some of the small providers who had a really niche offer. And it went massive. And then it went on from West Yorkshire to myself and my colleague Mark were basically running the programmes for North Yorkshire and South Yorkshire as well.
Did that kind of, as you were doing it, because there's a publicity element to it, but then you're also, I guess, being exposed to the technology and the benefit, for example, of these businesses.
Yes.
And the sort of terminologies that we're famous for in this industry. If we can use 45 acronyms to describe one thing, we will do that. And did that kind of trigger a bit of a real interest in what is this?
Yeah.
What is this product? What are the benefits of these businesses? And
I think when I was doing a lot of engagement with the small business sector themselves and how important the connectivity was for them to what it was enabling them to do, I suppose that was my first sort of nibble into what digital can really do. Obviously, people are aware of what the internet is at that time, and we were adopting it for whatever reasons, but to actually be hands-on and involved with the market was really exciting to me. And so, that was my first. I like this. And I felt like I had a lot of the right skills to engage with the market, with the providers, but also tell the story of why it's important from a public sector perspective.
Well, that's really important to be able to, and this may be due to your kind of background on the private sector. It's that being able to talk to the market, but then talk to the customers, because sometimes the communication doesn't quite line in, and I've seen it parts. One of the things I really thought was fantastic with the BD UK scheme is, yes, the bigger carriers, and by scale, they're going to benefit from that because, different markets on salespeople. But there was a lot of, for example, Leeds-based IT resellers who suddenly had a market open up to them, and they may not have been doing connectivity before. And it suddenly, we saw this growth of, I guess people will class them as resellers or businesses in there. They're growing. That's employing more Leeds-based people. The business is benefiting. So it must have been quite a rewarding sort of cycle in terms of that element to it.
Very rewarding. I've seen, actually, I've bumped into some of these organisations more recently and said that program 10 years ago really kickstarted their business. A lot of them were just in the sort of old school telco industry rather than going into the fibre and broadband market. And they've grown and done really great things since, so I'm really pleased with that. And I suppose BD UK and the government, who backed it at the time, would have said that's one of the positive outcomes that they really wanted to see.
I think it gets overlooked a little bit sometimes, the scheme, in terms of that benefit on the technology businesses who were able to provide the solutions.
And innovation as well, because there were a lot of we were going into people who were providing like wireless connectivity, which wasn't everyone was sort of thinking about digging up the grounds and fibre to the cabinet, and that worked. But actually, there was some really sort of guys who were doing some really innovative work. I suppose one thing I'd pick up as well, Will, is the role of the council. That actually really helped, in my perspective, the council get that real credibility of, we're supporting the customers, but we're also supporting the industry. And that, as I still see now, as the role that we're delivering. And I think that was a really great sort of outcome of that programme.
So in terms of the sort of the link, and this is the bit, I know I keep talking about the public sector, private sector, when it works well together, almost as you are a symbol of that with Leeds Council, they're not dictating to businesses. No. They're almost acting as we've put this scheme, but John's going to connect A and B.
That's right.
And for the benefit of the area.
They're enablers. So they know their local business population and their citizens better than the telcos do and the providers. So it was building the relationships, understanding local council relationships, councillor relationships. So it was that really great understanding, and I felt, I enjoyed being part of it.
How did you measure success when you were doing that?
Well, there was a number.
We spent all the money, or
we were the most successful area outside of London for the take-up of vouchers. So it was millions of pounds worth of investment that we'd managed to get from the government to put into the businesses, who then got the connectivity that they needed. So that was just a brilliant win for us. So that was the measure of success. But again, that's a number. It should be about the outcomes for those businesses, and hearing some positive stories about, are we able to deliver this new product or this new service, or we expanded our business by doing this and the other new things that we're doing. Some really cool high-tech businesses as well.
You only have to walk around Leeds these days. There's cranes everywhere. There's buildings. It's becoming a real powerhouse of the North.
Absolutely.
And a hell of a lot of the inception of that can be traced 5-10 years ago. So when you were kind of in the mix of the voucher scheme, at what point did you kind of think, this technology side of things, I want to get more involved in it? Because you're obviously private, public, and then...
Yeah, you know what? I don't know if I really consciously did that. What I did was I did that role for a while, and another role came up within the council back in the tourism side of things, and I ended up going on international trade missions. And part of my role was to talk about the digital sector of Leeds and West Yorkshire to investors, as well as people who might want to, business people and suppliers as well. I did the leisure side. So I went around the world promoting Leeds and West Yorkshire. And again, although that was not directly digital, having that really strong story about what digital was, and the health tech and the fintech, which is really strong in Leeds, that got me sort of a different side of things, thinking about it.
And there's more of a sales element, I suppose, as well.
There was more. Yeah, I was out there. I was out there to bring investment in or attract groups or event organisers in the business sector to come to Leeds to sort of do whatever their sector thing was. So I loved that exposure, and that helped me, enabled me to travel the world. And who'd have thought it, at least.
What was the best countries you went to?
Well, I went to Mexico, I went to America, I went to China, I went to India, I went all across Europe. I think Vegas was pretty cool. I can't beat going to Vegas to do a sales mission. That was pretty cool. Yeah.
I think I go to London. That's probably the most extreme. I don't think I would flourish going to Mexico with work.
I did that role for around about 18 months to 2 years, and it was during that time then that actually it was Virgin Media approached me about leaving the council and joining the sector. And a mutual friend and colleague of ours, Mr. Ferry, got in touch and said, would you like to join? And because of the relationship I built through the broadband voucher scheme, I was like, yeah. I think I'd liked what I'd seen from Virgin Media. And like you were saying, it's like I had got that bit of what digital can do in my brain, and I've been talking about it and I've been promoting it. Why don't I get involved with it?
It's fair to say your role was a business development function.
It was.
Without a specific target, but you were there to enable the wider business across loads of verticals in Virgin.
Exactly.
And to plug in. So I was in the SME sector, you'd support me. There was public sector, you'd be doing that.
Yep.
There'd be wholesale, you could be doing bits of that, all different routes to market, and your expertise in the kind of the north would be leveraged.
Yeah.
But I guess the point I'm trying to make is with our partners, it must be a challenge in those roles from people looking at life as a spreadsheet. What's it doing?
What's the tangible?
What's the tangibles? And sometimes they're not easy to quantify. You know they're there. Everyone can see they're there, and I could see that. But it's hard to put a pound, shillings and pence on things.
You did right. But I suppose for me is I was working, my region was the north, which I'm very proud northerner. And I made, with my connections at Leeds City Council, I'd made connections with other councils across the north, which was really helpful. The sales teams that I was working with, like you mentioned, the small business team, at the time we had a field sales and a desk sales team. So I was supporting both of those. We had the wholesale teams and we had the public sector teams. So I was making a whole range of connections. And it was like making those relationships will hopefully enable those guys to deliver on their targets. So it was, I was really impressed that I actually quite a bit of freedom to do the role how I felt I should do it. And I was backed by my management, which, a huge credit to Dave and a guy called Simon who supported me as well. So it was really, really important to have that backing. But I think they could see that there's this role was a great way of making a big impact. And I see it now, actually. I got thrown into some quite really random meetings with huge developers of major sites in some of our big cities to make sure that the high street's got the connectivity that it needs, working with councils on some of their growth plans. And lo and behold, another voucher scheme came up and I got involved with that as well, which was quite successful.
You love a voucher scheme.
I'm always all for a voucher scheme.
So in terms of how did you find going from the public sector into the private sector, different variants, and cards on table, I was at Virgin for 10 years, some of the best years of my career. Yeah. But a big corporate is different to a council in terms of how they look at things, how long-term, short-term, things can change aspirationally. How was that kind of journey for you from your career, kind of looking at that and, seeing those variations, if you like?
It was a bit of a shock to the system, very different. You've got quarterly targets, you've got these, pressure on you to deliver. But I think in that first role in particular, I felt I was backed, I was supported, and they could see the value of what I was bringing. the culture, I really liked the culture. I say it was very supportive, very positive. I could get involved with wider things amongst the business, and I became known within the business, which is, because there's a hell of a lot of people there. It's hard.
The nicest man in Yorkshire is going to get known, so
well,
don't worry about it.
It's no bad thing if you get noticed for being a good guy, right? In my opinion, and try to be friendly and supportive. It was nice to be thought of in that way, Will, for people to sort of, I'll just knock on John's door. And again, I'm one of those people who find it hard to say no to people. I also, of course.
That's why you're here.
Oh, yeah. That and a few pints you're going to buy me later. 100%. So, that's what it was. And I said, and then I did see the writing on the wall, though. I thought the function was going to go. And then I got approached to be a public sector account manager by some, Martin, who you'll know very, very well. And I thought,
another great
guy to work with. And I thought, let's bring that experience that I've got of public sector to being the other side of the table, that I will then be empathetic of the services and the requirements that they want the connectivity for and deliver. And that's the next thing I did at Virgin. And that has stood me in great stead for what I do now, because I've got that perspective of, I've been in the shoes now of the person who's sat opposite me, who's promoting their services, and I get where they're coming from, and I also get the fact that I'm more than happy to sort of share what my goals are and what we're trying to achieve to help you do that, because it's got to be a journey together. It's got to be a collaboration. There's always some things you need to maybe be careful about what you share, but the vast majority of the time it's what you're trying to achieve, what are your goals, what are your ambitions, what you're trying to set out, what are the services you're going to do. Let's have a collaboration. Let's have a real sort of way of working together and partnership building on trust, building on delivery. And that's been key to me. I've seen the suppliers and the individuals who I've built the best relationships with are ones who are really sort of, they get where we're from, and they're empathetic and they're supportive and they're trustworthy.
Yeah, trustworthy is such a big thing. I think one of the, and this is probably going to come out in the John Duncan book, How to Sell into the Public Sector by JD. Going into partner account manager, not partner account manager, public sector account manager, number on your head. Yeah. You can empathise with these people. Ultimately, you want to sell to them. What is there a different approach to sell to public sector? Can you just treat it as if there's another business? Or
no, I don't think you should treat it as like another business, because they are ultimately, every single one of us is paying into those services. We're all council taxpayers. We're all paying into our national insurance, and we all utilise the NHS. We should respect those services which are for us, and the people who work there who are delivering those services are doing it for a commitment back into their communities and society. I think if you just see that individual as a number and as a salesperson, you're not going to succeed, in my opinion. I think that the good account managers, account directors, customer service managers who work with the public sector have that understanding and empathy of where the public sector are coming from. And yes, they can be annoying sometimes. It might take too long to get an order form through, and all these sort of long legal processes, which we've all felt the pain of. But there's reasons behind it. We're protecting your money to deliver services for you, and you wouldn't want us to waste money, just because you're going to hit your target, sort of thing. So I think the good account managers get that.
Yeah, because I think that's a really important point for anyone who's working in that sector, wanting to sell to that sector, is that relationship piece, but understanding your customer, because invariably on the public sector side, they're balancing a number of things. Yep. It's not just one part of their job. And, my wife works in the healthcare, and if she could just do her job, she'd be really happy. Yeah. But unfortunately, you do lots of different things, so you need to empathise and understand that. So you did that, and then obviously the public sector bug. Yeah, but you didn't want to fully go. So was it a transfer fee, or was it a loan? It was a kind of a loan, but it was a free loan. Was it a free loan? it was a loan fee. There was no loan fee. What happened was, basically at the time, I think, and it might still be, the largest local full fibre network
public deal in the UK. So there was funding out there, which Greater Manchester went for, and to basically provide a full fibre network across, something like 3,000 kilometres of fibre. And the partner that they went with, it's a monumental amount of fibre in the ground in Greater Manchester, and that was delivered by Virgin Media O2 Business. And Martin and Alan McNeil, he saw that there's a real potential from a social value perspective. Yes, Virgin Media had won this huge contract, but let's deliver something that can make meaningful difference back to the people of Greater Manchester. And it was during the COVID times, so it was difficult to deliver a lot of the ordinary things that you might not usually do about social value.
To schools, you
can't do that outreach stuff, and I suppose I'd got my name out there well enough amongst Martin and Alan for them to know. I said, why don't we have a look at what do they need in GMCA? And GMCA needed a project manager to work on a project around digital inclusion. And they thought of me, which was huge. I'm so pleased that they did.
That's that point again, isn't it? People in careers taking.
They'd seen me and they knew about my talents and my relationship building, and I thought I'd be the perfect person. And so I was seconded for an original 6 months, and it turned into a 2.5-year secondment at GMCA. So I became the digital inclusion program manager.
Who did you feel you worked for?
Great question. I think ultimately, the person that paid my mortgage was Virgin Media O2 Business. So I worked for them, but I felt really, really strongly part of the GMCA team. They adopted me immediately. I really loved the working relationships I built there and the way that GMCA works. So I felt very much part of the team and on board with what they were trying to deliver and, their missions. It came to an end. Actually, it was December of 23, so not that long ago. And then I went back to an account management role. Customer success manager was the title. And I did that for about 4 months, but I kind of knew there might have been this role back at GMCA.
Just to be clear for anyone listening, when anyone says kind of new, that means things were developing. And but I do you know what? I make light of it, but you can't go from the role you were doing at GMCA and then go back to a customer success. I don't think it's. I can see why you. Yeah, we're having those conversations.
I gave my heart and soul to the role in that 4 month period I was doing it, and I was working with some brilliant councils. Funny enough, Leeds was one of them. So I'd gone full circle, and I was meeting some of the people before, and I was doing all the things I was doing before, building relationships with the key people, understanding the goals. But I'd been bitten by the bug, and I think my heart. If somebody said to me, where's your heart? My heart is in the public sector. I want to do work for our communities, the people in our areas where we live, and delivering something really, really meaningful. And I think was when the opportunity came to take this role. I was like, yeah, I'm going to go for it.
Credit to you. I'm right when I say this, I think it's a brand new role. So being public sector, there's processes, there's committee of the team to justify the role, the salary of the role, all those different things. Yeah. So for them to kind of have that with you in mind is a big tick box, to be honest, in terms of the impact you'll have had before that.
It was really lovely to have. I mean, we have a great colleague of mine called John as well, and he was doing some of that role with regards to a sort of advisory role. What we have is the connected places piece is actually it's part of the digital blueprint, which from Greater Manchester Combined Authority, and it's really all about that digital infrastructure piece. So I'd got that in my bag. I'd worked both sides of the fence in that area, and I think there'd just maybe not been enough focus on digital infrastructure. There had been some, don't get me wrong, at the GMCA level, but then it needed to.
Sometimes there's focus, but if it's 10% of someone's job or 20%, it moves forward at a lower rate. Whereas when it's a dedicated role, which yours is, and you're managing those relationships and you're kind of liaising. Yeah. For want of a better description, it pushes things forward a lot faster, I think.
It did. And I think, like I say, I'm now full-time in that role, and it's so all-encompassing about different angles of infrastructure.
Lots of new friends coming out of the woodwork. Hi, John. Do you want to come on my podcast?
Yeah. Let's have a chat. I'm all for that. I say it's... The first word in my title is connected, right? So it's all about connecting with people, connecting with suppliers, connecting with the customers, connected with, our stakeholders, people like the NHS and others, I'm working really closely with about how can we drive innovation, that enablement to deliver great services, which people like yourselves, your company and others, without you, we can't do. We need that space. So being connected to you is really important.
Must be quite difficult sometimes when you're speaking to the private sector and then internally where you can direct or support sort of digital growth.
Yeah, you're dead right. It is a challenge of money, but sometimes you can be creative with that and find ways of accessing money. So it's yes, there isn't a great big money tree to shake, but there's ways and means we can do this. How we encourage private sector investment, and there's a lot of that, going on at the moment. And it's being creative, how we can link it to other pots of money. There is funding in NHS innovation, and there's, different pots of things out there. So
sometimes that's one of the key things with your role. There'll be bits that people don't know they can access funding.
Correct.
We're only as good as we collaborate together with other businesses and
Indeed.
Things like that. And I think you're fostering that, which I think is an important element. I thought ignorantly, the first one on it would be a lot of potential competitors in a room. We want to be John's best friend. How can we leverage a relationship?
Yeah.
But the impression was very different. It was, there was carries on there going, oh, this is a regulation, and it was quite refreshing, to be honest with you.
We've trying to foster that collaborative between, potential competitors, that we get that, you've got your own targets to meet and everything like that. But we saw a great example of that during the digital inclusion work I was involved with, where 5 different telcos worked on providing digital inclusion services and support for residents. And they came together and talked about ideas and sharing. And we've just launched a way leave agreement, which was signed by 3 providers, which is that's pretty unheard of. So we're all about, if everyone gets that sort of mission of sense of direction where we're trying to go, let's bring everyone together. Yes, we respect that you've got your own
100%.
company shareholders to and targets to get through, but I think we're more effective, and there's a lot of sort of collaboration and the cooperative spirit that we have in Greater Manchester.
Where do you see this progressing to within kind of the northern cities, if you like, which is probably where our hearts are?
Well, they are definitely in the north. I mean, for me, I see Greater Manchester's economy continue to boom. I really do. And I think digital is driving that. Our digital sector is really growing places, particularly in cyber and the gaming sector as well. They're huge movers, and we're leading the way. We're leading the way in AI as well. And I think, having that collaborative approach. I hear some people who are talking from London, and they say they do not have that sense of collaboration and vision to move a whole area together. It's more difficult, even though they've probably got more money down there, and when they do, but I see our economy going great places. But it's important for us to make sure that it's not just centred in the city centres, that it goes out to all the part of Greater Manchester. And that some of the work I'm doing around about data centres, for example, and we've seen there's a data centre going up in Stockport, which I was with the mayor just a few weeks ago, and some of the positive impacts to local economic benefit that's going to be spun out to Stockport Council residents, I think is really important. So, I think there's a great opportunity in the north in particular, but say with Greater Manchester to really drive that digital economy, and I want to be part of that. But again, it comes back to making sure that it's not just for the few; it's inclusive. And when you speak to me, I always talk about inclusivity and making sure that everyone benefits, everybody.
The growth of Greater Manchester and the surrounding areas it can only be good for the Northwest. I won't put you down any difficulties politically talking about HS2 and investment in infrastructure.
Okay.
That's for a beer conversation.
Yeah.
But I think it's an exciting thing for the cities, and I think it's exciting with being able to work with councils now. I think the public and private sector, similar to your career, are now becoming a lot closer when it comes to infrastructure and things like that, which is a real positive.
Yeah, and I think the public sector has got a really important part to play in that infrastructure story, and I say we've driven, we go back to the local full fibre network, we've got that, but so what? Well, we've lit that now. So we've got a one network, it's called the GM1 network, which is going across, the whole of Greater Manchester, which is enabling more innovation within the public sector, that how the data can be shared between public services, and how hopefully we can look to use it for the digital inclusion agenda. That then helps the economy as well, because if more people are included and using digital services, and that drives jobs and growth, and it does,
and particularly on the education side. I mean,
the skills agenda is massive.
Everything. My 3-year-old's probably better at technology than me. I hear my wife saying, "Well, that's not difficult," but you're going to need these skills in the workplace. If you don't, I think you'll struggle as they go through. And I'm not worried that it's so prevalent. I think it's going to be a real benefit. Kind of your journey, obviously, as a Sheffield Wednesday fan living in Leeds.
Yep.
It's crazy. Went to university in Belfast from Yorkshire. Not many people have done that. I would imagine you were one of the few with a Yorkshire accent.
I was
in
at the
Belfast.
time, because it was during the Troubles. Yeah.
And working in a bar, them running pubs in Dewsbury, and I understand Wakefield, because when I was growing up at Huddersfield, Wakefield was a fantastic place to socialise. And then going into the retail sector for 3 years, progressing within there, and then going into Visit Leeds and all that stuff. And my only question is, how long will you keep doing the job you're doing now? Because I can only see it growing, but I can see you being interested to develop further.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love what I do at the moment, Will. It's brilliant. And who knows what's going to come in the future, but I just really like what I'm doing, because I feel that a lot of that career journey has brought me to this point. The skills that I've learned, the relationships that I've built, my interests, my passions. And I think my big motivation now is to deliver outcomes for our citizens in Greater Manchester. And I feel I've got some work developing that in that space. I want to see that through, and I want to really deliver on that. Who knows what the future might bring, but I think it'll be in the public sector. I kind of refer to this as my rocking chair moment. So it's that rocking chair moment when you've retired and you've looked back on your career and you go, what give you the greatest satisfaction? And what those things that you delivered that will make you feel, I'm on my rocking chair, I feel content with myself. Well, I feel the work that I'm developing now, and I have been developing and especially working on the digital inclusion agenda before, was something I'll look back on with great fondness, and the multi-1,000-pound deals that I could have commissioned and things like that. Yeah, that would have been great, and that might have paid for lovely holidays and things, but those are the things I think moment, which mean the most to me. And when I'm in an organisation which is backing me and helping me and gets why I'm doing what I'm doing, supportive of that, why would I not want to be part of it? And we've got amazing leadership. We've got we're very well thought of. I'm having meetings with really senior politicians. And I'm going down to London next week with the DSIT people, and they want to listen to what Great Manchester's doing. Great. That gives me satisfaction. People are listening to the voices of the public sector in the north, which is great. And I might not get that. I wouldn't probably get that if I was in a private sector organisation.
They say don't interview the nice people, but it's been a pleasure. I always ask a couple of questions of our guests.
Cool. So
obviously we weren't going to Sheffield Wednesday because why
not? Go for it.
Huddersfield fan, Sheffield Wednesday fan, we're born to suffer. We're resilient to that.
Yeah.
Why did you support Sheffield Wednesday when you live in Leeds?
Well, that was a classic. It was a character building thing, isn't it? As well, being a Wednesday fan. I was born in Leeds, but we moved out very quickly. My dad took me in the early 80s to Leeds, and in the early 80s, it wasn't a great place to take a young child to, and his best mate was a Wednesday fan, and so he says, "Right, let's go to the Hillsborough." And I went to Hillsborough, and we won a 3-0 game in the freezing cold. It was -5. We won 3-0 against Oldham.
So it was summertime then?
It was summertime, yeah. And I was hooked. I saw Hillsborough, saw the shirts, the players, what we had there. This was in the Howard Wilkinson era. And I fell in love, and I've been a fan ever since. And most of my friends are Leeds fans. And so we have a lot of banter, and it's all good because I prefer beating Leeds to Sheffield United, for me, because of where I am from. I don't like Sheffield United, of course, but beating Leeds, and you get that as a Huddersfield fan. Beating Leeds is the thing. Yeah,
100%. And last two questions. Chips with bits or chips without?
I would have chips with bits, but my wife doesn't like bits. So it's like if we're having fish and chips, and it's like, it's just chips without. And then for me, I would have chips with bits.
So for anyone who's not...
Or it's scraps. Let's get this right.
Yeah, for anyone listening, watching, who's not aware, the little bits of scraps you get at the top, most people chuck them away, not us. We put them in a bag, and we'll either sprinkle them on chips or you'll have them as a snack. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, it was a staple diet for my dad growing up. And then finally, if you were to have 3 guests, you can have 3 guests dead or alive over for a meal with you. Who would you pick and why?
Oh, my word. Well, Winston Churchill would be one, and Winston Churchill is a guy because I'm actually a Winston Churchill Fellow, so I won a fellowship, and that actually enabled me to go and travel the world. I went to Australia, and I met the Queen through that work I did. So Churchill as a really complex character, but somebody who just was an inspirational speaker. Don't agree necessarily with his politics. The work that he did was on his legacy was enable people like me and people from a whole range of backgrounds who would never get the opportunity to travel. He enabled that. So huge thing for Churchill. I'm a massive Depeche Mode fan, and so Dave Gahan or Martin Gore, the songwriter, they are my music inspirations. I'd love to meet them. They're still alive. So they're just incredible. I've traveled to see them all over the place. And that's my music. And I think a third person, Marilyn Monroe, because I think Marilyn Monroe...
Say no more, John, don't worry.
Incredible.
Your wife might be watching this, so
she might be, but
I don't want to get you in trouble here.
Her whole story, and I think is a really interesting one. And I think, she was... I think a lot of the stuff there she was taken advantage of, and I think I would love to know what the real. It sounds like I'm breaking into Elton John here, but what she was really like, and as an individual, and she would have certainly lit up the room, wouldn't she?
I'll tell you what, you'd have had Depeche Mode music. You've got Winston, brandy and a cigar, and then you've got Marilyn probably controlling the whole room, the ambience, and the ambience.
Absolutely, it'd be what a meal.
Incredibly ambitious character. Yeah, no, that's a fantastic choice. Thank you so much, John, for your time. It's really appreciated.
You're welcome, Will.
You're a legend.
My pleasure. Cheers, mate. Thank you.
What a shirt.
Do you like that?
That is the best shirt I've ever seen. Thank you very much for listening, watching. Absolutely love JD. The journey from private public sector is pretty interesting and unique. So hopefully a lot of value there. You can find our podcast through usual means. You'll see comments below. Have a look in terms of the work the Greater Manchester Combined Authorities do. You may be a business in the area that's looking for some advice on things. I'll encourage you to reach out. But thank you very much, and I'll look forward to speaking to you all soon.